Ba 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 ba. 3, 2, 1. Hi, my name is Daniel Feldroy. I am a software programmer with over 23 years of professional experience. That includes over 5 years at NASA and also experience with government organizations for the US, such as the Department of Defense, large companies, small companies, as well as consulting for myself, participating in startups. So I literally have decades of experience. That includes quite a bit of interviewing on my part, where I would go and interview and try to get a job, as well as interviewing people. So I've learned a lot over the years as to what is best for landing jobs. There are a number of things that I have found when interviewing people, or when I have interviewed, that have made a difference in how well things have gone. Now, these don't guarantee you a job, but they do increase your chances of having your resume looked at, of getting to that interview, and landing the job. One of the things I'm not going to cover in this is algorithms. The reason why is because a lot of people already cover that. So I don't want to duplicate what people are already doing. I want to give you something that's concise and useful right now. The first one is writing and communication. When you submit your resume, you should have spell checked it and grammar checked it. I know this sounds silly, but there are resumes that I have thrown out because those communications are flawed. The other thing is, when you send email to someone who's responding to your submitting a resume, use a grammar check on it, use a spelling check on it. If that means using Grammarly or Word or whatever, do that. Trust me. Most of being a software engineer, most communications, unless you're getting to work physically in an office, and I anticipate that's going to diminish over time, is through written communication. If you cannot write clearly or demonstrate that you can write clearly, you're going to be at a disadvantage. The next thing when it comes to communication is your verbal communication. I love accents. I really, really do. I have this ability to understand lots and lots of different accents spoken in the English language. There are times, though, when people's diction and colloquialisms, the things that they say in their country, are different enough from the English that I understand that it becomes, for me, a little bit of a challenge to communicate. If I'm working with you one-on-one, I am more than willing to work through that. But here's the thing. If you cannot communicate in English in an interview with someone who's not me, who loves to work through accents, you are putting yourself at a disadvantage. This doesn't mean you won't get the job. It just means you're setting up an extra barrier. One of the things I've advised people to do is to join local language groups. And even in a country where English is a first or taught in schools, if you are looking for international jobs, it behooves you. It is in your best interest to join a discussion group. And by discussion group, I mean where you either get into a Zoom call or Google Hangouts with other people and practice your diction, or you are, there's also in cities, there's people who join together with groups like this. And this is just so that way, when you are working in a professional environment where you're working with people who may not be used to your accent, you are able to speak in a way that is more clear to them. And again, I want to reiterate that I love accents. I love the different colors of languages. To me, it's fascinating. If I retire, digging into this is something I want to explore. However, I have seen it hurt people's jobs, or chances at getting a job. I've been in interviews where I understood the other person perfectly, but the second and third people in the interview with me couldn't really understand them. So this is really important. And that brings us to the second thing, which is your video interview. If you get into an interview and there's video, make sure, this again is communication thing, make sure that there's no background noise. Try to, if you can, get a noise filtering device like this microphone. Well, this is, maybe this is overkill, but there are noise canceling devices that you can buy. That is something worth exploring if you are in a noisy environment. And what I suggest you do is test it out before you get into that interview. Record yourself speaking and then put on some headphones and listen to yourself and make sure you can be heard. If you're in an interview and the interviewers say that there's too much noise and they offer to reschedule, take them up on that offer. Do not insist on sticking with that interview. This is really important. If I cannot hear you and I ask, hey, can we reschedule this for when you can be in a place where there's not so much background noise, take up the interviewer on it. Because if I have to try to hear you when there's too much background noise, I can't judge whether or not you are worth working with. And not only that, you are not taking into account my needs, that I cannot communicate with you. So that is going to be a mark against you. So please, if someone asks you, say yes, let's reschedule, I'll take care of it. And then really do take care of it. Next is how you present on screen. Look, right now it's 96 degrees Fahrenheit. I think that's like 37, 38 degrees Celsius. It's hot, so I'm in a t-shirt. When I'm interviewing, or if I on either side of the interview, I will have a colored shirt. That is as I get a little bit formal, even if I know that the place is going to be a t-shirt place. It just shows a little bit of respect, and also you don't know who you're going to be interviewing with. Why not stack the deck in your favor and wear not just a colored shirt, but a clean shirt? Yes, I've interviewed people with obviously dirty shirts, and not like a little bit of stuff right here. I'm talking about like just messy. And it's like, come on, show some respect. If you are put in front of an end customer, is this how you're going to dress? And sometimes engineers are put in front of end customers. On a similar note, if you're in a video interview, make sure your background is clean. If you're on Zoom and you have a powerful enough computer, you can have like the fake background. Like I have a blue screen, but I know with Zoom you can have other backgrounds. If you can't do that, clear up the space behind you or move to a spot where it's clean. This is really important. If I am in an interview and I see lots of dirty dishes, well, I'm a parent of an 18-month-old. I'll probably be okay with it, but not everybody will be. Other people will be like, this is how they're going to present to us. What about if they present to customers? Or how are they going to, what's their code quality going to be like if they have a messy kitchen? And I'm not making this up. I have been in interviews where the post-interview discussion was talking about how messy the person's background was. And it sucked because I really wanted to hire this person and I couldn't, just because their background was messy. So please do me a favor and have a neat background when you interview. So neat shirt, clean shirt, nice background. There are contingencies, like if you, for whatever reason, like right before I started this, my daughter, she's 18 months old, was coming in, she's giving distractions. That kind of stuff can happen in an interview and it can mess up your background. That stuff happens. That's one thing. But the least you can do is in advance, look like you've prepared for this. Next is public persona. Technically speaking, and there's probably laws against it depending on your city, your municipality, your state, your province, your country, an employer may or may not be able to look at your social media and make judgments based on what you post. But it happens. And for me, I typically don't care about people's politics or religions. I try to judge them outside of that. However, and a lot of employers are like that. They might say, oh, this person has, voted for someone else. That's their business. However, if there's something that you are involved in publicly that's illegal, just keep that in mind, that may hurt your employment chances. So if you, and this is in recent history, if you got involved in protests in college to legalize something, and then it's 5 years later, no one's going to care. That's that's not a big deal. But if you are currently promoting, agencies or groups that have agendas that you think that a potential employer might have problems with, you may consider removing public message that you've posted to that. And that's not how the world should be. I totally agree with you, but I'm talking about the reality of trying to find a job. And I certainly have I see this where people say, hey, I would hire this person, but they believe X. And I'm, sometimes I agree with what the person agrees with, sometimes it doesn't. But again, consider what you're posting in social media and how that can affect things. And I know this is controversial. I know that we're having a lot of social unrest, and there's a lot going on with the pandemic. And this is part of why I am often neutral in what I say in social media. And whereas in my local municipality, which is outside of social media, I'm very vocal. I am very determined in what I believe. I'm active in some local events, but I don't put it into my public persona because I know it, there's a price for it professionally. And if I didn't have a little girl, I might feel that I need to take care of. I might feel otherwise, but for the moment being, this is what I'm doing. So it affects people even who do have a professional career. Okay, last I'm going to get to code. And by code, I don't mean algorithms. I mentioned that I wasn't going to cover algorithms, and I'm not. Instead, what I'm going to cover is, I guess we could call it the quality of code. A lot of times, especially these days, because resumes can be enhanced and colorized, and it's hard to determine if they actually mean anything, people will ask for some kind of portfolio. That could be a GitHub link, so that way people can look at your code, or it can even be a sample project that you are being asked to create for the company. I have done both on both sides. So the first thing that you want to do is have your code be PEP 8 compliant. And by that, it means, if you don't know what PEP 8 is, I suggest you get onto Google and you type in PEP 8. PEP 8 is the style guide for Python, and it has rules for the number of spaces for indentation. And mind you, this is specifically for Python programmers, but there's also similar things for JavaScript and Go and other languages. This is just for Python. Is find a style guide and make your code stick to it, and find the right style guide for the language. If you are building a Python application and you're using a Java style guide and the Python application is Django, it will smell funny. And to the point that there is a very good chance your portfolio will be rejected before anyone looks at code. One of the tragedies that I see, I'm going to skip to the bottom of this. So one of the things that I will see in portfolio projects is I will see this. And this is not PEP 8. If this were to be PEP 8, the view would be defined as def homepage. Okay. And the same thing would apply for the Flask version. Here's the thing. This style is not PEP 8 compliant. And this is something where when people look at your portfolio code, they will just reject you out of hand. They won't look anywhere. A lot of people won't look any further than the fact that you defined homepage this instead of this. There's a reason why we have style guides. It is so that way we can more easily understand what is a function, a method, a class, a variable, a constant. It means that we all have the same number of spaces. There's a lot of details with the style guide, and by following it, it means that if you are hired on, it is a sign of experience. And You may code like this, and you may be an awesome coder, but by coding this way in your portfolio projects for a Django project or most Python projects, I know the data science world does this quite a bit, but we're not talking, and data science has their own standards that you should also adhere to. And part of getting hired is knowing which standards to use in your project. Now, there are going to be people who say, well, when I hire people, I don't look at this. Typically, those people are like me. They have an established career, and they are, they have the luxury of taking the time to look through 100 resumes and determine quickly which ones, 100 resume and portfolio projects, and determine which ones they're going to hire. The people who will not filter on this, though, I am certain, is a fraction of the actual people who will look at this and in their filtering process say, they are not following PEP 8. I don't want to hire them. So learn PEP 8, go and search PEP 8. If you are doing Java, if you're doing Go, if you're doing JavaScript, look up the standards for those and follow them. If you're doing stuff in React or Vue.js, look up the standards for those projects and follow them. Get religious about this. This will increase your chances of getting through filters to get your resume and projects looked at. Another thing is when you code, make sure that your code it follows best practices. This is a coding standard, but there's also best practices to consider. I'll give you an example. This is something I often see in tutorials again, I'm going to bring out some Django forms, model forms. This isn't just best practice. This is a security issue. And so I think I can do fields. Let's see, class meta model equals my model, and I think I can do fields all. Actually, I think this goes in. I think this goes here. Okay, is this it? Yeah, this is it. So what this means is when this model is brought in, all of the fields will be displayed. And for reference, this is not a good practice. This is an anti-pattern. This is a security issue. Maybe you don't want all of your fields to be displayed this way. So there's a way to handle this. I'm not going to go into it here, but what I am saying is for the framework or tool that you're using, level yourself on best practices. If you're talking about Django or Flask or any tool set, there are always free resources you can find online. In the case of Django, a lot of them are borrowing from Two Scoops of Django for listing best practices. That's not always the case. Lincoln Loop, you were first. But the point is that learn these best practices. It will go a long way. For the critical ones that are red flags, it's usually just 5 or 10 items. We're not talking about a lot of work. And if you have a project that doesn't have these, then what you do is you submit commits to address these in your portfolio projects. And that brings me to the next one, which is the magically appearing perfect portfolio. When I have been tasked with looking at portfolio projects, one of the things I look for is commit history. And I'm not looking for beautiful commit messages. I mean, that's useful. My commit messages they could be better. What I am looking for is growth over time. Nothing appears out of a vacuum. And so when I see a portfolio project that just magically appears, what that tells me is that this is it. That what that tells me is maybe that's not their code. Maybe they grabbed it from someone else and they brought it into their GitHub domain and they borrowed it, they've copied it. And so when I see that, that's when I start looking to see if they're copying, if they copycatted someone else. Or the other thing I start doing is I start looking for, is there any obviously proprietary stuff in there? In either case, not having a decent length Git log is a high concern when I look at a portfolio project that's stored on GitHub. So please don't do that. And finally, of course, that brings us to cheating, is that in your portfolio projects, don't cheat. Don't copy others' works. I've caught people who, my favorite, the saddest case is I hired someone and then someone else submitted a project from the same company, not the same company, the same country, and it looked almost identical. And so then I checked, and they submit about 2 weeks apart, and they were identical. So I basically said, I can never really work with this person who did that. That also made, because the first person referred him to do that, he said, hey, go ahead and submit this project, you'll get hired. So then I'm having to manage the fact that an employee that I hired is encouraging a friend to cheat to get hired. Yeah, that was an unpleasant day, and I promise you, I did not have the worst day out of the 3 people, myself, the person I hired, and the person who applied. I was by far not the worst person, but I really don't like letting people go, and people are often surprised when I do that. The thing is if you are working for a company and you bring on someone who's dishonest, that can and will hurt everyone around them. And so to protect the rest of the people who are working on my team, I had to do what I had to do. And I don't like doing that kind of stuff. It makes me lose sleep. But this is the sort of thing that interviewers are looking for, especially if you're submitting portfolio code. So I hope this helped you, and I hope that you can take something from this. If this helped you at all, please like and subscribe. If you have any thoughts or things you want to add, I can redo this video. Please include a comment, or please mention it in the comments, and have a great day. Good luck in your job hunting efforts. I know it's not easy, especially right now. Things are a little bit crazy, but I know you can do it. This is all said to help increase your chance of finding a job. I hope I didn't offend anyone, but the reality of it is when you're trying to get started in a job, these are important things for people to know. So again, thank you. Take care.